Pantani is hooked up at the back now, so the Pirate is on board, and it looks like he might be jumping ship here because he's gone. And Marco Pantani has launched an attack. The cheek of the man, Paul.
The courage of the man, the fact that he's fought his way back into the group. He certainly knows what it's all about. He's gone off on the attack. He's covered immediately by one of the riders there from the Kelme squad. I'm pretty sure, in fact, that is Roberto Heras who's gone across onto his wheel. And the man doing all of the work behind to pull them back together is Belocchi, the rider from Festina, who today is proving his mettle.
Belocchi looking at third place in the Tour de France and a podium finish in Paris today, if he can hold on. And hold on is the wrong phrase, because he's doing a lot of hard riding here. He's the third wheel now, as like all good climbers. The first one fails, you put in another one straight away, and this one may have it.
Well, Marco's gone again. He felt the reaction of the Kelme riders coming onto his wheel there, and once the rest of the group came in, he's launched a second attack. This is the ability that only great climbers have, Phil, to be able to attack again and again and again on an ascent like this. But again, it's Heras from Kelme who's coming across the gap there, and the whole of the group once more coming back together.
Well, Marco Pantani has tried twice now, and the Kelme boys have closed it down, but this time it's a bit of a struggle as they try to finally shut down.
Well, he's still got a slight advantage there, but it looks as if the effort has gone out of his move. He's out of the saddle again, Phil, trying to accelerate, trying to open up that gap. In fact, it's Botero now who's decided to take up the chase behind Marco Pantani. The Kelme rider from Colombia is trying to nail down the gap. The Kelme riders today, Phil, they want this victory, but so does Marco Pantani, who wants to prove that the Pirate is back.
He is back. He's back in the group, Paul, as they've come round him here again. I wonder if he'll try once more. It depends how much he's hurt himself on that climb. You're catching glimpses of the flags, I would think, and you can see how they're blowing now. They've broken out onto the exposed section of the Ventoux, and they continually change direction, and of course so does the wind. And it looks as though Richard Virenque has cracked on the climb.
Well, the accelerations have proved too much for Richard Virenque, and it's all because of the accelerations of Marco Pantani on the front. This guy, Phil, is going to go down fighting. He's come again and again. He's thrown every attack that he's got at these riders in this group. They've all managed to respond, but he's got rid of Virenque for the moment. But the two Kelme riders are able to respond every time to his attacks.
Well, another example of how you get dropped on the climb, but you should never give up, because Pantani came back to the group and has now attacked them twice, and they're very wary of him now because they're afraid he might hit them again. And one thing he is doing, Paul, he's bringing himself to form for the Alps at the weekend.
Ooh, and that's going to be scary. These are the climbs that Marco Pantani loves. The telecom flags out there for Jan Ullrich. Ullrich now moving himself further forward. You can see those flags. They are absolutely out straight, and Virenque is digging deep now to try and pull himself back into this group. A big sigh of relief for him, Phil, as he makes it 7 again, but right off the front, Marco goes again.
Did you see that kick then in the low gear? And Belocchi is the man who digs again, and followed by Botero as they try to get a little group away.
Well, they are getting a little group away. There's no response for the moment coming from Lance Armstrong, who's taken up a position on the wheel of Jan Ullrich. Ullrich, Phil, today is in great form. He's not the man who was in difficulty in the Pyrenees. He's coming back to be a serious challenger in this Tour de France, but that acceleration again has proved too much for Richard Virenque, and again the Frenchman left trailing.
Well, there is Richard Virenque, and coming off the back, but every time he nearly gets on, Pantani launches an attack again, as the French public cheered him on here and tried to encourage him back up to the leaders. You can see the top of Mont Ventoux now, but it is still a long way away.
This is the weird part of the climb. This is when it opens up. It really is like the mountains of the moon. It's completely open. There's hardly a tree in sight, and the wind is howling over the top here, Phil. Pantani is climbing himself back up to being a challenger for this year's Tour de France. He's a long way down in the overall standings, 10 minutes and 34 seconds down, but he's proving today that his climbing ability is back, because he just wants to keep kicking and kicking and kicking at this group.
Well, he's climbing up into the top 10 in the Tour de France today, and that'll be far more respectable for little Marco, former winner of the race. And this rider, 102, is climbing up to third place overall, and for him that's an outstanding performance.
Well, Armstrong is in a very nice tactical position here, Phil, because the only person he really has to worry about in this group is number 61 in the pink and white, Jan Ullrich. Ullrich is his closest challenger. He's in second place overall at 4:14. And for Lance Armstrong, I think the only thing he has to do on this climb is control the maneuvers of the German. He's maybe not too worried about the climbers. The only thing that will be in the back of his mind is if he can stay in contact with this group, it's a great chance to get a monumental victory and write his name in the history books.
Absolutely. and 15 seconds the gap now back to Richard Virenque. As these riders continue, look at that barren road up the mountain. You can see the view now, and we're not at the top yet. A magnificent view if you're not riding in the Tour de France. Ulrich more concerned with the view behind him and the whereabouts of the maillot jaune of Lance Armstrong. Took a good look at Lance's face there as Armstrong just came up to the front. There is the road still to go. It just winds its way like a snake all the way to the observatory at the top. It doesn't look that steep from the helicopter, does it? Believe me, it is.
This section here, Phil, we're looking at around about 8.5% gradient, but bear in mind these guys have been climbing this mountain now for around about 40 minutes. Armstrong is taking up first place and he's trying to set the tempo here. He's going to wait for the acceleration to come for the climbers. The two Kelme riders at the back riding very close together. They will communicate with each other, but you can see the effect that the wind is having on this group. They're fighting all over the road because the wind at the moment is coming right into their faces.
So Lance Armstrong now sets the pace on Mont Ventoux. Richard Virenque is now 16 seconds behind. The Pirate's gone again. Up on the inside he went, and this is his third big attack. And this time there is no reaction.
Well, Armstrong's not going to react. He's going to wait for someone else to set the pace there. But Pantani, what a man. He has hit them I don't know how many times, Phil. He's gone again and again. He was put into serious difficulty on the early slopes, and now he's trying to get himself the stage victory.
Well, this is superb cycling by little Marco. He'll go back into the popularity poll here because everybody thought that he wouldn't do anything in the Tour de France. He didn't. I must say, the way he was riding in the Pyrenees, I thought he might not do anything. But today, he's been off the back, he's suffered, and now he's put in yet another attack, and this one may have worked.
Well, it may have worked, and one thing he did say, Phil, after seeing that attack of Lance Armstrong on Hautecam, he said, the performance of Lance Armstrong has put my feet back on the ground. I realise now what this bike racing thing is all about, but the response has come from Kelme. This is Santiago Botero. Botero, the Colombian rider from the Spanish team, is riding himself onto the tail of the Pirate.
Well, superb riding by Botero, Paul, because this is the man who broke away after only 45 kilometres. Only 2 days ago he had that breakaway of over 200 kilometres. He's obviously got tremendous form this year.
Well, Pantani must keep going now. He's got to keep accelerating. But this young man is an incredible hope for the future. And this, Phil, this performance by the Colombian rider here is why we saw the Banesto squad on the front. They realised the danger of Botero. They realised that Botero has the ability to climb right up in the standings. But the Pirate has kicked once again, and Botero didn't quite manage to make the junction.
Well, he'll ride his own speed right now, Santiago Botero, in his first Tour de France, his first taste of Mont Ventoux. This rider here knows all about winning mountain stages of the Tour de France, but he only has won before in the Alps and in the Pyrenees. Now he might be claiming the Giant of Provence.
Well, his great hero and his great friend is Charlie Gall, and Charlie Gall was the first man to win at the summit of this climb, and Charlie Gall is at the finish today. All 5 previous winners from the summit of the Mont Ventoux are actually here at the finish line to see this monumental day, but now Armstrong is going to go.
Well, look at this then, Armstrong, and they wouldn't have expected that. Ulrich has done nothing about it at all. He saw the speed and the acceleration of Lance Armstrong, and he's gone off after Pantani and Botero, and they've got nothing left.
Well, look at that. Ulrich could not respond. He must have heard that attack coming. He must have felt it go by. He looks at the Colombian rider. How are you doing? Thank you very much. Goodbye. I'm now going to chase after the Pirate. He's chasing just one man on the road, the man who's in the pink jersey of Mercatoni Uno, and there he is, just there.
Well, this is an incredible demonstration of the sort I don't think I've ever seen in the Tour de France, because Armstrong is toying with the top names of the cycling world. He left them, and they knew he was going because they couldn't even raise the pedal length. Now he sprinted straight past Santiago Botero, and he's coming up to Pantani. And what will the Pirate do when this man gets on board?
Well, he'll try and kick again. He's trying to accelerate, but you're not going to stop the onslaught of Lance Armstrong. The man from Austin, Texas, is controlling this bike race the only way he knows how.
Well, in the Pyrenees, he told us he wasn't interested in the stage. When he's taken a real good look at Marco, almost as saying, the back wheel for you, Marco, jump on if you can. And Marco has done just that. But I think this time, Lance Armstrong wants the victory.
I'm certain he wants the victory. He's looked at the names, he's looked at the history books, he knows the history of the Mont Ventoux. Phil, he was put into difficulty in June in the Dauphiné Libéré, but he came back twice after that to train on this mountain, to learn this mountain, and certainly he knows just exactly what this mountain can do to you. For the moment, he's playing his cards perfectly.
Well, the man who took out all of the time trials and a road race stage at the mountaintop finish of Sestriere last year on his way to victory in Paris is now looking for his first mountain victory and indeed his first stage win of this year's Tour de France.
It's amazing to look at this bike rider, Phil, when you think in 1996 at the Olympic Games his body was riddled with cancer. He finished 6th in the Olympic Games time trial there, and only a few months after that he announced that great illness, that he's come back, he's beaten, and he's ridden to the top of cycling's ladder. He is riding now in exactly the same way that Eddy Merckx used to ride his Tour de France's.
And this comes another attack here, and Pantani, rather begrudgingly, has had to get out of the saddle again, but he is rising to the occasion. He's holding Lance Armstrong just now, who probably is struggling a little bit to recover from that incredible acceleration that swept him up to the front man.
He's looking over his shoulder. He wants to know just exactly how Marco Pantani is right now. He knows the reputation of this climber, Phil. He's seen how many attacks Marco Pantani has put in so far. A little word over his shoulder. He may well want, in fact, Pantani to come forward and work with him, because the wind out here is absolutely unbelievable. You could see the jersey on Jan Ullrich. He's fighting against this headwind. The jersey is being ruffled by the wind, which is around about 35 miles an hour. Look at those flags.
And the gap, Paul, back to Ullrich is now 20 seconds. So they've lost 20 seconds in that one sprint up to the front by Lance Armstrong here. He's got that cool-looking face again. It looks as though he has recovered. Pantani here looking a little bit worried. But I don't know where he's found it from, but he really has done a superb ride today, Pantani.
Pantani's a star. He's won the Tour de France and the Tour of Italy, and now he's riding himself back into the sport of professional cycling. 11 months out of the sport, and he's proving once again that he can be a climber. He's launched so many attacks, Phil, but amazingly Armstrong is such a patient rider now. When Armstrong turned professional, he was impulsive. He would not wait and ride tactically. He had to do it. When he felt good, he went off the front. But in this Tour de France, he's watching everybody's move and reacting when he wants to.
Well, there's the finish, but it's still a long way to go because we twist around this mountain rather like a helter-skelter. But the American flags are flying high and strong right now as Pantani is now helping out Lance Armstrong here, not afraid to go to the front and set the pace. And we've just gone past the memorial there to Tommy Simpson, the rider who died in this race on Mont Ventoux on the 13th of July 1967, and Lance Armstrong goes by in the yellow jersey, the jersey that Tom never wore. Oh, he wore once, but in the race he died he didn't, and was the race he really felt he could win that year.
You can see the wind is really having a major effect on this breakaway, Phil. You can see the jersey of Lance Armstrong rippling in that wind at the moment. Armstrong is in such incredible form. He's looking at the face of Marco Pantani. He wants to know whether Pantani can follow his accelerations. But Pantani is digging so deep today. Armstrong kicks once again. Can the Pirate follow?
I'm not sure, because the elastic was stretching a bit there, and it is just about dead straight now as Pantani is coming slowly back up to the wheel here. What a fantastic show of defiance by Marco Pantani. I think Lance went up to Pantani, Paul, because he fears Pantani will refine his form when we go down to the Alps, and he's taking all the time he can get while he can get it.
That's what all the riders in the Tour of Italy were worried about. They didn't want to give Marco Pantani an easy ride in the first 15 days. They knew they had to put a lot of time between themselves and Pantani before they came to the final Alpine stages. And in those Alpine stages, in the last week of the Tour of Italy, Marco Pantani was the strongest climber. Armstrong's acceleration there was not able to get rid of Pantani.
This reminds me of the battle between Ullrich and Pantani. When Ullrich was in yellow and Pantani took him on the mountains, and they broke away together. And now we've got a similar situation, except Ullrich isn't second overall this time around, but he is just hanging on to the man who very definitely is #1 in the Tour.
Armstrong setting the tempo now at the front. There's still an awful long way to go to the finish, Phil, and this has been an unbelievable ascent of this mountain. Armstrong has played his cards perfectly, close to his chest. He's waited, he's watched all the climbers attack each other. He's watched Marco Pantani attack on more than 10 separate occasions. He waited until he felt was the right time, till he came to the point of the course where in fact he was put into difficulty in the Dauphiné Libéré, and he's actually conquered his fear of that climb.
He's certainly done that today. He's taken on Mont Ventoux and he's shook it out, and he's proven that he really has no fears on these slopes. There's still a little way to go, but the longer to go, of course, the better for the chase group, Paul, or the worse for the chase group rather, because they're losing so much time.
They're losing huge signs. In fact, we are not going to get an idea of exactly where the last kilometre of the bike race is today because of the wind. They haven't been able to put up the Flamme Rouge, but Armstrong will know the finish. He will know where the finishing line is. He's been here, he came here in the Dauphiné Libéré, and he's been out and looked at the course. Just a little further down the road, just 200 metres behind, you can see Jan Ullrich is moving himself slowly but surely back up to the American.
Well, I think we are actually in the last kilometre, Paul, because it's not too far past the Simpson Memorial, which we passed about 500 metres ago. So we're just about 1 kilometre from the summit now, and you're right, it does look as though those riders behind are just still about 20 seconds back and may well be closing in. But Armstrong, who has really made the Pirate suffer, but the Pirate has refused to get off, and he might well try to take Lance on in the sprint.
Well, Armstrong is sitting in first position here. The Pirate tried to come up alongside him. The Pirate, let's not forget, Phil, is a very good sprinter, but Armstrong certainly wants this stage. He's setting the tempo over the last few hundred metres as we come towards the finish of this monumental stage, and Armstrong has blown away all of his rivals on this very difficult summit.
And there is now just 100 metres to go. I don't know if the riders know that because there's no signage at all today because of the wind, but in fact Lance Armstrong is about to make the final turn for the finish. What an ascent of Mont Ventoux for both of these riders, and except Pantani, Armstrong is gaining time over everyone. Now, is he going to take out his first stage win in this year's Tour de France? We can see the line now. I don't know whether they can because there's only a line on the road. Pantani is on the right, and Armstrong keeping on the pressure here as we start to approach the line now. Pantani grits his teeth and accelerates and over the line. No doubt this was another great day for Lance Armstrong, and here he is now talking with Gary Imlach.
Certainly approaching the line, you looked like you had